Rave to the grave.
Welcome to Rave to the Grave. My guest today is Elijah, half of the DJ duo Elijah and Skillium and co-founder of London's Butters label, who have done more than possibly anybody else to package and promote grime music and get the message out to the rest of the world. Butters was created in 2010 and is home to artists like Swindle, Flava D, DJ Q, and Royalty, as well as releasing the biggest vocalists in grime, including DEE, Getz, Flowdan, and P-Money. Somewhat true to his name, Elijah is a prophet, not only amplifying the traditionally UK-centric grime sound, but continuously predicting and shaping the future of arts, culture, events, and what it means to be an independent artist. You can find his thoughts on all of this on his social media, which I suggest you check out. As well, he's thrown hundreds of events, put together over 300 radio shows, as well as compilations, mix albums, vinyl 12 inches, and the list goes on. At his age, he's one of the wisest and most savvy voices the culture has to offer, and I'm super excited to sit down and talk to him while we're not yelling at each other next to a speaker. Elijah, welcome to Rave to the Grave.
Thank you. That was like a mad intro. And I never really hear everything lined up as well, like next to each other, because a lot of things live separately, like the music and the rave, and then like other bits, just they all sit like they're like different me's sometimes, or sometimes it feels like it's other people's thing and I'm just like helping. Or, do you know what I mean? It's like,
I mean, you're definitely one of those people that behind the scenes is helping sort out things for a lot of different people. But I can just say, as somebody looking in from the outside and knowing you for like, I guess maybe over 10 years at this point, or at least knowing of you, I'm just always like, how is Elijah doing so many things?
I don't know. I just enjoy it. So it's like easy because none of it feels forced. A lot of it doesn't feel like work. It's like, okay, let's try this. And I think the last decade has just been a lot of fun, and it's like not hard to get me out of the house to do some music stuff. Sometimes I've been lucky that some things have done really well. So you're like busy still doing the thing that is still working while you're working out what to do next. Sometimes it doesn't work as well, but no one really knows because the other thing is still working. So.
Right. And hopefully nobody sees the stuff that isn't working because it just didn't happen.
Sometimes it's like it comes out in a different way. Like, oh, yeah, you know what, that idea, I can just like remix that or just bring that back. Or, you know, that time we did that thing and it flopped. Like maybe it'll work this time. And so when you're actually hard up for ideas, you can just go back to the projects that didn't work and I'm going to try this again.
So have you always been like this? Like, were you like this driven when you were a little kid, like 7 or 8 years old?
I don't think so. I think I was lucky. Like I had my own bedroom as a kid and was given enough, like just like Lego and like a radio with like a tape recorder and I don't know, like pens and pencils, just enough to be like grateful and like creative. Like just try it. My mom was like, oh yeah, just try it. You know, you want to do something, like, okay, you want to go play football? You know, he might be David Beckham. You know, I went to like skateboarding, tennis. Like I just tried loads of different things, and my mum was just like, yeah, just have fun. And I was lucky in that sense. Like I'm a single mum as well, so it wasn't always easy to like just do anything you want. It kept me out of trouble and stuff, you know.
Where are you from? Like, where did you grow up?
So I'm born in Hackney, and I was raised like in East London, so just the borough adjacent, Waltham Forest, and I still live there now. So I live like 10 minutes from where I grew up. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm not social with my music friends because I still hang out with like the people I went to school with still, and I've just stuck to the people that I like, and some of them from 5 years old, and I've tried to carry that into music, kind of just having long-term relationships and staying friends with people through the ups and downs of this journey.
What was like the musical palette around you growing up? You lived in East London next to Hackney, but that's a pretty famous area just in terms of the mixing of like Caribbean music and also just like rave music.
Yeah, I mean, these are things I just thought were normal. I just thought that's what everyone listened to because that was what was accessible at the time. So I was listening to pirate radio from really young, as long as I can remember, from like 6, 7, 8, just because I had a radio in my room and you could just flick through the dial and it's like, okay, there's jungle, but I don't remember there being a moment where this is jungle, unless there was like a compilation out or something like that. It's just like that was just the music that was there. Had no idea until like I got a bit older that there was a scene and there was raves and all this other stuff. But I was like experiencing club music in my bedroom as like a young kid. And then so just I guess for age sake, if 95 I would have been 7. So like Original Nutters out. And like General Levy, Incredible was on television in a pop chart. So you have this weird thing in England where there was like these big dance records, Prodigy. Yeah, there's these songs like Chemical Brothers and all this like stuff that was out and in the charts and available and played alongside underground records of the same similar kinds of producers. And it didn't feel like underground to me. There wasn't like a distinction of like cool music and uncool music until I got a lot older. So I could be like at a house party or, a family event and you'd hear like Wannabe, but then also like the remix of, Radiana, Here I Come. Like you hear both songs in the same event. And also, I'm Jamaican and reggae and dancehall, again, I just thought it was just normal. Everyone listened to that. It was kind of raised on it by proxy. And even just hearing the bass lines of songs through my neighbors. Like there's certain bass lines like, like Slang Tang, just hearing it. And I don't know where I heard it first or anything. Busta Rhymes, fire it up, doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. I've heard that song through walls, outside cars, outside of my house, playing that doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. I wasn't like on like a musical discovery journey. This is literally just the things that are on the doorstep or just on the easiest routes to listening to music.
You have like all these things around you, right? Like everything playing on pirate radios. Like there's jungle at some point, there's UK garage comes along, there's pop music, there's rap, whatever. But like, what did you consider to be your first love or the thing that was like your music? Was that grime or was that something else originally?
I think it's grime because dancehall and reggae stuff was like, it was Jamaican, but it was also like, it was far. Like I used to go to Jamaica in the summers, but it was also like their music, bring tapes back, and it didn't feel like something you could contribute to. And then grime came and it was just like, this is like a mixture of garage and jungle and hip hop together and dancehall together. This is like literally made for me. Like this is like the perfect genre, like is handed to me on a plate, and all the people do it, or not all the people, but a lot of the people are from East London. It's on the Pirates. It's free to listen to, and some of the people went to my school, and it's just, I think I didn't identify with garage as much as a child because I didn't go to clubs because I was young, like suits and champagnes and stuff. Like it didn't hook me in, even though I thought the music was wicked. But I was just like, oh, these are just tunes, innit? Like whatever. But then with grime, it was like, oh, that's like, these are like my peers, like people that are the same age or a bit older, doing something that was just a go-between of all these things, and it was quite raw. And I guess like maybe with rap music from America, there was always like a performative aspect. There was like, like Diddy in like a mink coat and a hat. Like, that he doesn't wear that like down the street or something.
I don't know that actually. I think he might. I think he wears whatever.
Whereas with grime MCs, like when you saw like a video or like a picture of them, they're just in their normal clothes that you would just see them walking down the street. There was like no frills. It was just like, that's what he looks like. Well, the video, he's just wearing the same outfit that he wears day to day. Sometimes you would see them in real life in the same clothes, but you'd literally see them in the same tracksuit and be like, oh, you wore that in that video. Like, that's mad.
Part of the appeal of grime was that it was like very down to earth.
Yeah, just come as you are. And the thing is, I still love the songs from that era now. Garage is like our disco. The songs will just never stop being played. When I started going out in like 2004, that music was called old school garage then. And the same songs from that period of time are still being played, 17 years later. It shows you the strength of those songs.
What are some of these songs?
So like Wookie Battle and MJ Cole Sincere, some of the So Solid songs, like even like So Solid 21 Seconds, it was like the number one song in England. These were not like underground bangers. These were like the pop of the day.
If you hear a UK garage song and you hear a grime song, you might not think that they were related.
I guess there's three like shifts in like London dance culture at that time, for at least for Black London. I don't know about what anyone else was doing, but at least from my understanding, someone else would be like, no, it wasn't like this. But like there was a point where jungle was the biggest thing, and it got like harder and faster as it went along, and people decided, okay, well now we don't want to do this. We want to do like house music, but the UK version of house, and then putting like ragga samples on it, and UK influence music on like American style house, and speeding it up, like playing like Todd Edwards records and speeding them up, like I don't know what we'd call it, like +5 or something, like that's like literally taking it up the Richter scale and then making songs at that tempo. So if they were playing like American house records, these would be like 125 BPM, and people started making songs at like 130 or 132 or 134 and upwards. And I guess every generation is going to make the antithesis to what came before. So once garage went from this kind of trying to be different to jungle, and then went so far, it got poppy and cheesy and is in the charts, and the Spice Girl was making garage. Like there was literally a song with like Victoria Beckham on garage. For us youngers coming through, it's like, how can we even be part of that? It's like, this is like a pop thing already. So I guess people are forced to do something different organically. And then at the same time, the democratization of production happened. So like Fruity Loops and kind of new production software came out. The bedroom producer was like becoming a thing properly in like the early 2000s. Whereas like some of the, if you see the music videos and the studios that the guys were making the garage in, they look like real studios. And then you see the music that early grime was in, it was just like, rooms with computers, like their mum's computer, they were like making beats off. It's like the technology and the, let's do something different to them, and not being allowed in as well. Like, like when a scene forms fully, the gatekeepers of it, they don't tend to like let people in as easy. So people just go and form their own thing. And then before you know it, that thing becomes like the thing that the kids go to. I guess out of garage came dubstep and grime, like side by side. And then a lot of the grime people dropped off and then did UK funky. And then the funky guys were like, oh, we want to do real house music now. Then, it just goes on and on. Like there's these little shifts in twangs, but it's all coming from the same community.
I've always been jealous of people in the UK because, well, first of all, like everyone grows up listening to dance music and everyone is like a really dope DJ. Like you'll go to a house party and you'll just hear somebody killing it on the decks. And it's like whoever's cousin or some guy that's at the house party or some woman, whatever. And it feels like, it's just a part of the fabric of the culture. But the other thing you have, as you mentioned, is that you can see people in the pop charts that the idea that you could make music and you could actually get somewhere with that music and have a career doing it is like not as far removed as traditionally it's been in the States. EDM is big, like dance music is big now in the States, but like growing up, it was like, I don't know what my future is in this music because I don't know how I'm going to make...
There's like no mainstream exposure kind of thing. Like you don't have like shows on the radio and stuff.
Yeah, like you can't really hear it on the radio. There's points where you're like, do I even exist? Like, does this even exist? Because it feels so underground because there's no representation like in our mainstream media. In London and in England, like everybody knows somebody that like had a chart hit. It's like 1 degree of separation from whoever's on the radio.
You know, a lot of people ask when you travel around, it's like, oh, how do you discover this thing? Or like, and it's like, you're not discovering it, you're kind of born into it. So when we're learning how to DJ, you've already got the fundamentals in your head from listening to so much DJ stuff anyway. You know what goes together because you've been listening for, like most people listen for 10 years. And if you started at like 14, 15 on the early side, you'd already listened to 10 years of dance music before you even got going. So you had like some ideas, like, you know, that house and jungle doesn't mix because you've just never heard those songs put together, so you don't even try. I thought that when I was like taking DJing seriously, that I was late and I was like starting at 17. And it was like, oh, you're going to buy records like now in like 2004? Like, have you lost your mind? Like, people don't buy records anymore.
I mean, how old were you when you first heard grime or started getting into grime music?
I was 14 in 2003. No, I was 16 in 2003. So maybe about 14, I would have been consciously aware that Dizzy Rascal and Wiley are different to Wookie and MJ Cole. It wasn't just a producer thing. It was like producers and MCs. Like a lot of the top MCs produced, which again, if I was comparing it to rap music, like Jay-Z and Nas didn't make beats. Like this is like, it was Timbaland and the Neptunes and stuff. So this was like this thing where it's like, oh, the man that make beats as well. Yeah, okay, sick. Like, and they had come from a DJing background too. So they knew, like, it's like they knew what would work, like, because they'd been in the DJ seat. It's like, oh, this will work. They know what will get a reload. That, but now I think the MCs are more like either one or the other. A lot of the people don't produce MC and DJ.
So who was like your MC? Like in this first round of grime that you were introduced to, who was your guy within that?
So in the early time of the setup of grime, you'd have like different shows and then different MCs on the shows with their own beats. So you couldn't, so like if you listen to the Roll Deep show and you had like, say like Dizzy Rascal and
This is like a radio show we were talking about.
yeah, so this is on like Rinse FM or something like that. They would have their show, just their beats, just their MCs, no crossover. They didn't play anyone else's music but their own. And if you listen to Rough Squad, they would do the same. It's like it was different music happening completely. So you had these kind of different universes happening that obviously were intersecting at points, but they weren't. They had Nasty Crew as well on a different station and with different MCs and different beats. It's like there wasn't that much crossover happening. So you could turn on, say, Nasty Crew, for example, and be like, oh, like Kano is sick. But you're only hearing him over like a certain style beat with a certain DJ Mac 10. And then you could turn on like Rinse and like have, say, like Wiley and the Roll Deep Crew over certain beats. So you'd be like, oh, they sound sick on that. Then it's like you don't even need to have favorites because on their songs, they sounded sick. But the short answer is DWE.
I remember just being shocked at how many people would be in one crew. Like Roll Deep, I don't know how many people were in there, 20?
Yeah, there could have been points where it was like 15 dudes and stuff. Because it like, so in the previous generation, So Solid, that was part of the garage kind of wave. They had a crew of 21 members or 20 members or something. And it was crazy. Like you couldn't get them all in one picture. It's actually kind of modeled off an old sound system, like Jamaican sound system style. It's like everyone's got like a little bar and then you just pass the mic. It wasn't built with the mind to design songs with or to make songs with and split money. It was just like for live performance and, you know, radio shows and just spitting. Like you got a bar, yeah, you're in the crew. Like, and then when things got a bit more like professionalized or like there were songs being made, then the crews kind of slimmed down to like the serious people that are actually on making music and making songs and taking things forward. So in the early days, there was like bigger groups of dudes. then it slims down to like, you know, 5s and 6s and then usually to 2 or to 1.
I seem to remember that there were a lot of funny MCs, people who had like characters, like Bear Man, who was always rapping about being a bear.
Yeah, I guess like through again, what we're coming off the back of is like WWF Attitude Era, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Kane, The Undertaker, like this period of time where like there is big characters like in general, do you know what I'm saying? And it wasn't like just as simple as, you know, people are referencing music stuff. Like it was like Street Fighter and this thing, and like they'll say outrageous things like, yeah, man, I'm from the Matrix. I've got like this gun that could heat seek you. And it's like, what the hell? Like, what are you talking about? But it was funny. When it became a bit more like business oriented or more serious, then people were like, oh, actually, I don't want to like do the gimmick anymore. This is the classic line from like 2005. Man's not MC, man's an artist. And that was like the transition of like the people that are trying to get a reaction and make everyone like pop in a rave, like, to like it being like, oh, I'm going to make records and become like become an artist and be taken seriously.
What are a couple of your favorite all-time things like that? Like if you were like, somebody should definitely go watch this, or this mix that so-and-so did in this year was like the greatest.
There's a JK and Discarda clash from Lord of the Mics, and it's just a very good clash of MCs, and it's like funny, and then they shake hands at the end, and I just like I like that. Just the sportsmanship. It's just there's just parts of it that I just like burst out laughing. I think like a lot of the old Rinse FM sets. So if you're able to on YouTube, a lot of them are there. So if you just search like Newham Generals, DJ Tubby, Rinse FM, and you'll have a good time because it's like grime and dubstep mixed together with DWE and Footsie and a lot of beats that never came out. Because they're drinking as well, like it's like a kind of party atmosphere. You can kind of hear them progressively getting more waved.
On the note of things people should go watch, one of my favorite things was this ladies' night freestyle that happened on Westwood's show on BBC with a bunch of female MCs, Lady Chan, Nole, Lady Lesher, Princess Naya, etc. And like they all just body it basically. And Lady Shan is insane. Like she's so good. I like the range of like a more traditional rap style, then you get like a grime style MC, you get double time, and you also get like patois, reggae dancehall feel. And sometimes MCs can do all of those things, which is insane to me. I just like that one, and there are so few compared to how many guys are in grime. There are like so few women that it's kind of cool to see them all together. Going back to DWE for a second, watching some of the DWE freestyles, especially from the early times, I guess for Tim and Barry or like...
Yeah, there's an Aim High one. Yeah, there's like an Aim High one for this guy, DJ Target, and Risky Roads as well. Like they're all up on the internet.
Risky Roads. Yeah, so you had all these like platforms where they were kind of hosting different MCs. You could like watch them. And also like Tim Westwood, who was on BBC, had a bunch of grime MCs on as well. And watching DWE like rap is something otherworldly. It's like he goes to like a different place.
That's very original. I've never heard that from another individual. To come across something like that was a miracle. Double C, can't be critical about my lyrical, cause my old bars are murky, new lyrical. Each and every one of my bars, them are classicals. You're known in the hood and I'm known international. Soon gonna make peace like I be national. With an experimental. Now it's standard on instrumental. I do it in the rave and everybody goes mental. The raving crew turn far from gentle. So MC don't get me mental. Now get bust, get sent to the dental. About you wanna jack my lyrical. Jack my written. With my flow, that's never gonna fit them. Lyrically fist in the mat, I'm gonna give them. Next time when a bigger man a chat up on the rhythm, better hold it down. You don't wanna be missing. Might get found by somebody fishing. Might get found by somebody pissing. Nah, that could be my bar. You're spitting lyrics. Hold it down. You don't wanna be kissing.
It's crazy. Like I always say to people, watch the other people in the room when he touches the mic. It's not even necessarily just about him. Like you can see the room change, like energy, just everyone goes, they know it's about to happen. And he can just say one, he doesn't even have to say a word. He just does like his vocal signature. It's just like, ooh, and everyone just, it gets very tribal. It's like, like everyone just screams and like goes mad. And for me, like the visual of happy groups of men is quite strange. Like genuine joy of like, just like that is quite strange to see. And especially because like say like in everyone's pictures, they're like hard and like, you know what I mean? Like no one's smiling and you know what I mean? You don't really see that side. But when you see sometimes with DWE or some of these guys, you see just people get happy. I'm lucky because I got to work with him like as a DJ later on. And he's one of the people that I'll just say that must be a gift. Like there's music college and all this stuff now. It's like, you can't teach that. There's, to make other people feel that way about something. Like there's no course for that. There's no YouTube. There's no stems or that you can download. There's one of one.
Yeah, his swag is just like unbeatable as well. You know, like there's a certain thing that you don't see that often in the States. Like maybe you'll see it in New York because there are a lot more like Caribbean people in New York and Jamaican people specifically. But just this like OG rude boy swag, like some of the stuff DWE wears and the way he carries himself, it's like you're seeing almost like a flashback to dance hall from the 90s.
Yeah. We like, I guess those guys are a throwback because that's what they were raised on as well. So they watch these things like the Sting clashes and like some of the bigger sound clashes from like 90s Jamaican dancehall history, and they literally like modeled themselves on that. And like I don't know if anyone's ever seen this Vibes Cartel and Mavado clash, and like
Legendary.
Vibes Cartel comes out in like a full army suit. Like it's just like a cartoon. It's real, but it's like you'd think he's prepared like this whole thing. It's like I'm gonna go and buy an army suit and come to this clash and like dress the part for this thing. And DWE is a guy that dresses the part for occasions. He's not gonna go out and just like perform in a random tracksuit or like me will be in like black t-shirt or black jeans. It's like his outfit and his presentation and his stature. And even sometimes I'll see like the way when it's like a group of MCs on the stage, he doesn't really force his way into the microphone. He's like, he gets one little step, and then people get a sense that they know they have to pass it to him for that moment to happen. So he's not like, oh, give me the mic and like make it happen. He's so cool, collected, because he knows what he's gonna do. And it's like, it's magic. I did like one of his headline shows here in London, and like a kind of history of his work. And when we were putting together the set, we had to actually use the beats that are for the freestyle videos that are on YouTube. So they're not even real songs, but we know that, 1 million people have watched this freestyle. So we have to like find the beat. We're like, oh, what's this tune called? Oh, I will go to the producer, find it. And then because we'd never performed the freestyle before, when people heard the beat, it just, the place like erupted. I don't know. I don't know what it was like when, I don't know, people heard like Slangton for the first time. That must have been like mind blowing. Or like if you heard like Original Nutter in the rave for the first time, like that was blowing your head off. And maybe that's like those things, maybe the closest things that I've experienced to that. And maybe some dubstep actually. I was there like when a lot of the songs blew up.
It's so crazy to think about because I think it was Slang Tang that was just like created on this Casio, right? And it's like a preset on the Casio that somebody's messed with. And grime is kind of the same way. Like it's like people learning how to use Fruity Loops on their own, no tutorials, no YouTube like knowledge quite yet at that time period. And you get these songs that are just like huge and such a part of the culture, but they're literally so minimal. If you listen to them with no MCs on, some of these songs that are so famous are like really bare bones. It's not a pop song where somebody spent like hours meticulously crafting all these synths and this and that. It's literally like 3 elements maybe.
Yeah, it's like a photograph of someone's life in like, without them getting the chance to pose for the picture. You know what I'm saying? Like Pulse X, all right, cool, bam, 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 it works. You see it get reload. I don't know, the producer didn't say, let me go back in on it and like adjust the hats or whatever. It's like, no, that's what it is. And people like it that way. And there's a magic in that. And it's hard, like as you progress as a musician or as you like learn more about production, and there's so much information available, you want it to sound the best possible. So you do lose like bits of magic that, if you only had an hour, limited gear, Like it forces people to produce in a different way. Whereas now, with the records I work on, like that's not their goal, so you don't really get that music anymore. And yeah, I don't know how you get back to that point unless that's why I guess like people like a lot of the music coming out of South Africa or like some of the Brazilian music, because people just like rolling up raw, putting it out like bam, 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 kind of like how we used to. The pressure of having to get plays or like build your career or like whatever you're trying to do out of it, it changes the way you would approach something. That's why I guess we all in dance music or electronic music or whatever this is we're doing, it always like kind of reverts to youth again, because you're like, they don't give a fuck. Like, let me see what they're doing. Do you know what I'm saying? I think about that a lot because I'm in that middle ground now of like not being old, but then also not being young. I'm 34. So most of the big DJs here in the UK are still like 10 years older than me. But then all the emerging DJs, I'm 10 years older than them. Also, like, I'd have no idea some of these, whatever they're sampling from or what their reference is. They're like, oh, this guy, like Kaz from Love Island said this. I'm like, oh, I have like no clue of what their references are now, I guess. It's just me seeing people have fun. I guess like, that's that top priority.
What were some of the ways that people were consuming grime? Because I seem to remember there were a lot of different ways to kind of consume grime. There was like, what, Lord of the Mics DVDs and Channel U after a while, which was like a YouTube channel.
Yeah, so at the beginning, it was just literally pirate radio. There was no visual form for maybe like a couple of years. And then the DVD thing came in, so people were just filming it on like kind of home cameras, like that you could just buy like in the supermarket or something. It was like so cheap to produce DVDs. It was like, you know, £2 or something, and you could sell them for £15. Loads of people made DVDs. Even I made a DVD just of people freestyling or the pirate radio sets from that time. So that was the first time like cameras were introduced. Obviously, there's no camera phones. Then you're starting to see what people look like. So when I started seeing like what the guys look like for the first time, I'd been hearing their voice for a couple of years, some of the people. And you're like, oh my days, they look like that. That is jokes. Like some of the appearances felt really striking. Like I wasn't disappointed. Like when I saw what DWE looked like, I was like, oh my God, like, of course you look like that. Like he had to look like a superhero in some way because of what I was hearing through the other side. So yeah, there was like DVD series. This one called Lord of the Decks first, because like Lord of the Rings was out. So I guess it was like a flip on that at the time. So there's Lord of the Decks, and it was like a kind of documentary style thing where people making music and talking about the scene. And then there was like the battle version of that called Lord of the Mics, which is quite famous, and like the big MCs like clashed. So they were going back to back and sending for each other like face to face, which it'd be like a Smack DVD. That was the kind of closest thing. So because people here were watching the New York hip hop DVDs, there was like Smack and the Come Up. I remember seeing, and a few other kind of crew variants, Dipset and other bits, you know. And then later on, this channel came on our cable television called Channel U, and then the music video side that people started making. Then it was like the whole country got to see like what London looked like, or what a bunch of like young Londoners looked like in tracksuits. Just like, I don't know, some of the bigger videos at that time were like, they were put out by big platforms like Dizzy Rascal, and Wiley stuff was on XL. And there was Kano, who was on like another big label at that time, and Shiesty, who had like really well produced videos. And then there was like just underground like budget stuff from people that are not well known today, but the songs are still quite big because that was the first wave of Channel U music. People like hail it up as like a big shift in the culture because it became a visual thing after that. Whereas I think like dubstep was like just dance music for clubs. That some of the best things that came out of that wave of before there was content. Now I see it in my feed all the time, like these old sets and clashes, because it feels like so retro now. Like no one would ever film themselves in that way. The sound is weird because it was just filmed off the camera and not off the proper like desk audio. There's this before HD, before 4K, before the iPhone. It looks like really like it was filmed in the 80s or something. It looks so mad.
Yeah, it looks really crappy. But I think the thing that endures from that era is just the energy. That is also like magical, as we were talking about.
You know, if you listen to grime long enough, like all of us, we've seen people literally grow up. So you've seen like, 16-year-old Dizzy Rascal become 36-year-old Dizzy Rascal in the time that he's been around. And at that time, there was like 16 to 20 was like pretty much the whole scene, which is kind of mad. But it also shows in like the results of what was happening and, you know, maybe what the ambitions were. And there wasn't like a lot of business savvy behind the things that happened. People were just doing stuff.
What is it like to go to a grime rave compared to going to like a regular rave?
Ooh, I think there's like a few different kinds. So just like the early days of what we remember as grime raves were like raves that had grime on it. So they were like this event called like Sidewinder, which was like a garage event. So you would get like the biggest garage DJs of the time playing hits, bangers, like I'm saying, like the disco of this day. And then you'd have a moment where like, say like DJ Slimzy comes on with 10 MCs or Pay As You Go crew, or there was more of like a performance side to it, and then it would stop. But the bits that people remember of it, of taken from it, is just the videos of those sets. So you think, oh, that's what the whole rave was like, but it wasn't actually like that. That's what got kind of lost in translation for a bit. It was like, oh, I'll never want to go to a grime rave if it's going to be like that the whole way through. But actually, for 4 hours, people were just dancing to songs. And then there was like a performance. And Eskimo Dance was like that as well, where they had like hip hop and R&B playing, dancehall. Then they would have the set with all the MCs. I guess if you were a booker or you're like someone that's looking in and the only thing you saw of Eskimo Dance is just this set with like 30 dudes on it, you'd think that's what the night looked like. The music wasn't built for like all night raving in that way. It was built for sets and radio and MC spitting on it. So we had to kind of like play it in a way that it could be like a 2-hour set or something. And I don't think we ever like mastered that, or like not even mastered it. I just don't think the music was like ever designed to be played from 10 to 6. So you could just have house music running all night, or drum and bass, like where it's like, consistent pattern pretty much from 10 to 6. With grime, it's like a complete mess sonically. It's like all over the place. You don't know what you're going to get beat wise. And like the music was designed for MCs. So when we started putting on raves as well, our club nights had garage and UK funky and maybe jungle on some of them and dancehall, because those are the music that I like raving to as well. For example, like we would have like Easy playing UK garage, we'd have like Champion playing funky, or Little Silver playing some funky, or Oscar, and then we'd have like Swindle and Silky maybe playing like 140 dubstep-y grime vibe, and then we'd have MCs like over the grime bit. It was like billed as a grime rave, but you're kind of getting this kind of selection of like the London sound of that time. Basically anything but like drum and bass and house. So that was like our creative like boundary. Was like, we're not really going to play drum and bass because there's space for that, and a lot of people didn't like it, and we weren't really into it organically. It wasn't like I didn't like the music, we just weren't following it. In the moments where there were like MCs and passing the mic, it's super hype, but then if you never even saw that bit, you wouldn't even know you were in the grime rave.
There was a point where clubs did not want to book grime, right? They did not want you to throw a party if they thought that it was going to be a grime thing, in the same way that like we used to have that, and still do actually, with hip hop. Certain places are just like, no hip hop nights because it's going to be trouble. It's going to be too many young black men in one room is going to be like a problem.
Yeah, we have that here too. It's like, and we know it's now, I guess we know it's not music based, because it happened with like house music in the late 2010s, where there was like this kind of dance culture like called shuffling. I mean, shuffling has existed, but there was a London shuffle scene or house scene.
Throwing shapes, right?
Throwing shapes, exactly. So there was like, yeah, I don't know if there's some show notes or something we got to like link. But basically, yeah, it was like black people linking up, dancing in house clubs in London, daytime parties and stuff. And there was like a lot of people trying to like, in the wider like commercial house scene, was like, what are these people doing? Like, why are they dancing like this? Like, these people are clowns. Like, we don't want shufflers in our clubs.
Yeah, I'm shuffling with band. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah. It was like if you look like you're gonna be a shuffler, we don't want you in our club. Like it's
suspected
it
shuffler.
Yeah, like it was mind blowing at the time. Like me and Skillium were like, did you ever think that in London, like people would be like turning up their nose at dancing? Like London's a hard crowd to play to, and we'd finally found something where like people wanted to put effort into the dancing bit of the show. People would come out regularly to dance. Like that is their specific like thing, not to talk to girls, nothing, just to dance. And they were like, nope, we don't like it. We don't like what this stands for. Scared, like too many black people. Like, and so it's like, okay, it's not grime. It's that it wasn't MCs that were the problem. It was all of us. Even if we're having fun, even if we're visibly excited about something, it was like too many dudes, too many black people can't control you. No. Yeah, that's how racism, I guess, like plays out in society here. And till recently, I guess until last year, it was standard to just be like, yeah, we don't want those kind of people, or don't want even those kind of DJs that played in those events to be in our events. And if we pick you out in the line and say you can't come in, then like we'll refund your ticket. Like we don't want you in here. Like that was just normal. Like, and I grew up with that mentality, and that's what kept me broadly away from like a lot of commercial spaces. Because you think, well, if I can't get in, then what's the point in going and putting on shoes or whatever I have to do? And that's probably why I'm more gravitated towards grime and dubstep and UK funky things, where it's like, well, they don't expect you to be dressed a certain way or behave a certain way, or you don't have to, you know what I mean? It was just like, just come as you are, behave, and you're fine.
At what point did you go from being like a fan of grime to deciding that you wanted to do something within the music or be involved in some way?
I was writing about it like on the internet while I was at university, and then it just got to a point where there's only so much you can say without doing the things that you want to see. So this would have been like 2007, 2008. This is the hard thing about like being a critic, starting in that place of like, oh, like they should do this, they should do that. You're just like, okay, well, I should just do it. And that's how a lot of people probably get involved. Like we start with being a fan, then you're like, maybe I'll help here, or I'll write this, or interview people. And then you're like, well, might as well DJ as well, because I've got all the records, I'm buying them, I'm supporting. And then you've got ideas on top of it, and you're like, oh, I might as well do the ideas. And then sometimes, like, because I was speaking to people mainly on the internet, it would be like, oh, it's you. I've seen you before. I've seen you in a rave. I'm like, yeah, it's me. It's like, I'm the guy from the internet. But I'm also been standing here the whole time. Do you know what I mean? So the first three years or something of me getting to know the artists, they had already seen me like in the club. So it was like my face was familiar, and same with Skillium. So it was like, there was like a trust there that we wasn't just like, we just came and we were like coming to like take over the scene. It was like, nah, we were just standing on the other side before. And the thing was small enough for, if you saw someone regularly enough, you'd be like, cool, yeah. Without asking them for anything either. Like it wasn't until much later that I started like more becoming like a peer or something. I didn't really ask anyone of anything. I play the songs and, you know, work with new artists. And then once that kind of intersected, I guess, like when, you know, Swindle started making songs with DWE, then it was like, oh, yeah, what you guys are doing is linking up with our thing.
So what were some of these ideas in the early part of Butters, or like when you say that you went from being a critic or being like, why don't people do it this way? What were the ideas that you were like, this is what someone should do?
This is going to sound super basic, yeah? So at the time, there was no like Rinse FM podcast. So you couldn't go onto Rinse FM and just download the show. You had to, like, someone used to record it off the station, upload it to another website, and then the download link would die. You couldn't like talk to the DJ. It was that thing didn't exist yet, unless you called up the hotline when they were in the studio or something like that. I was like, well, first of all, I want to record the podcast. I want to have it there, put it on my website with a download link that doesn't die. And I'm going to give you the track listing so you know what I've played. And I'm going to like talk through the songs and who it is and where you can get them from. That sounds like really basic, but at the time it was all a mystery. So we started doing that, and then I could see like, you know, these things were getting like thousands of downloads. Because I used to have on my bedroom wall, I think it was like 2011, I want to get 100,000 downloads of the Rinse show. That's how, like, it was like literally every week there was 1,000 downloads. I was like, oh, if we can get it to like 2,000, then there's something happening. Rinse FM, like they started doing the podcast more regularly and having it there like a day after your show had aired. So I stopped focusing on that. And then a lot of the producers had stopped releasing vinyl because like vinyl sales were down and it was LimeWire era, Kazaa and all these kind of free download things. I was like, these dubstep man are like selling bare vinyl. Like what the hell's going on? Our music is the same as theirs. Like why can't we just put it in a shop next to theirs and just see what happens? So I was like, well, I'm going to put the music back in those spaces and like prove it works. Like I'm certain that all these people buying Tempo records and Hyperdub records would buy a Butters. I'm sure that if you liked Benga, you probably liked Terra Danger. Like what the hell? Like they just hadn't been presented in that way before. That was like one of the initial aims, and that's what kind of kickstarted the idea of the Butters label and us doing it in that way.
So the blog that you were doing was called Butters also, or no?
Yeah, I just wanted to like write, and like literally the Sunday that I opened the blogspot.com, I was like thinking of a name, listening to Roll Deep on Rinse FM, and Skepta was on there, and he was like, this song's Butters, very Butters. I was like, bam, there you go, verybutters.co.uk, bang. That was it. I didn't think about it for like more than like 20 seconds. And I just kept that name through the blog, then the label. And like, obviously if I thought I was going to be doing it for 13 years or 10 years, whatever it is, I wouldn't have called it Butters. I would have called it like, I don't know, like cool, like Hyperdub or something. Like Hyperdub is like a sick name for a label.
We have to mention that you run Butters with a lovely guy by the name of Skillium. How did you meet Skillium for the first time and like develop this partnership?
We met at university, so he lived in the same kind of house as like one of my other friends. And then I was like, I've got decks in my room. And he said, oh, I've got records. It's like, oh, well, just come around and have a mix kind of thing. And then that's where it started. It's just like, let's just hang out, play tunes. And it was kind of like actually just helping me get better. What's that saying? Like knives, sharpening knives, or whatever the saying is. Someone forcing you to get better and pushing you. Yeah, it was like my personal trainer of DJing. So it kind of started like that, and we did a bit of university radio together. And then that's where I learned to use the CDJs in university radio. Yeah, it's like he's always been a bit more like reserved, and his like natural personality isn't to be out there and loud or whatever. But then his core skills are like analytical and quite precise detail-wise. So he fills the gap that I don't have skills-wise. I'm lucky that we met and then like formed a partnership and did stuff together. And then he has those skills too. Like if we were both like me, then nothing would get done, but it'd be a lot harder. Like he goes in on Excel, he runs the back end of, our core artist business. And so someone else doesn't have to, like we don't have to have like a label manager type person. Like at the beginning, obviously it was just a DJ partner. Then we became a DJ duo, like something that we were doing together. And then we were like, started a company together. And we're friends as well. Like we were doing like normal stuff. We're going like Ibiza and like going to Cancun. And again, we've been able to like remain friends and solvent and stable this whole time. 16 years now. It's like quite unique.
The rest of the world has not had an easy time like accessing grime, in part because it's like tracks with a bunch of MCs on them, which you can't really DJ in a club outside of England. When I was trying to play grime in New York in the first wave, when you had like Wiley and Dizzy Rascal and Kano and these people were talking about, Americans were just like, I don't understand what these people are saying. This is a track with like a jillion MCs on it screaming. Like,
yeah, it must be like insane to hear something like Power or something like you're like there's 10 MCs on the song. Like it's crazy.
Then I think after a while, even the MCs kind of started making tracks. Like you get somebody like Skepta who has made link with American hip hop and has figured out how to keep his style, but also make tracks where people do understand what he's saying and can latch on to things.
Yeah, he's a master for that. His clarity is very, like some people don't like that about him, but then that's why I've always liked him. Like he's got like songs like, if you're single, then mingle. It's not like a thing for like a rapper to say, but it is very simple. And for the rest of, even the rest of the country here, they wouldn't understand what a lot of people are saying. So when someone just comes through and says, if you're single, then mingle. If she's buff, put your number inside her phone. She wants to take you home, go on then. Like anyone could understand that. If like let's just say like a DWE thing and it's like, head get mangled, dangles, just I just like a wear my kangle. Like it must be like Matrix thing happening. Yeah, it must be too much for like most people. Never mind, like if you're not from England.
Yeah, it's insane. So I felt like one of the things you did with Butters was there was enough stuff for DJs to latch on to instrumentals and stuff where it made it possible to play these songs in your not exclusively grime set.
Yeah, that was important to me, man. Like, just again, like dubstep inspired that really. Just seeing that music work, and like I used to go to the raves. Like there was like this rave called Forward. I could just see like, okay, this music is more or less the same as what we're doing, but it's communicated differently. So it's like if it can fit alongside like say like Scream Midnight Request Line or Benga and Koki Night, and you can hear the way to put those things next to each other, then other people that are buying records more broadly, that they would understand how to fit in Swindle, or they'll understand how to fit in Royalty into that mix. And that's like what the label is there for. It wasn't ever, I'm not a purist in that sense. I'm a purist in terms of communicating the idea of what we do. I wasn't trying to say like, grime take over everywhere. It's like, no, it's like, I'll do it. If you want to play the record alongside whatever works in your zone or whatever works in your area, then great. Like even like this song, this Rhythm and Gash song, I always see like the Brazilian MCs like on Instagram MCing over it. I'm like, okay, it works in your culture, like it works alongside the beats that they play. That's what you want. You just want something to be like universally accepted as what it is. Do you know what I mean?
Eles pedem na DM pra me fazer pique chora. Gosta de me ver sorrindo, sonho dele dos amigos. MC braba, fashion Ike, empresária e contando. Falsos botando a cara e caindo, sigo contando. Eles falam de nós, mas não trabalha, sigo contando. Era camelô e lembro de vocês zoando. Engraçado, por isso tá aí, meu bolso tá lotado. Queria me ver parar, então vai morrer desapontado. Sigo firme no meu corre, você segue encostado. Falando muito dos outros, te amei no seu frustrado. Fala comigo, bebê, que é o quê? Se não tiver, nós que manda trazer. Manda buscar, vem de XRE.
So you started Butters in 2010. Were you guys already on radio before that?
Yeah, so we'd done about a year and a half on Rinse FM before. I guess like we got the radio show at that time because there wasn't a lot of people playing grime on Rinse, so they wanted new grime DJs. I know it sounds mad as well, like, oh, they were like Rinse FM were looking for grime DJs. Like there wasn't like an abundance of DJs, but they already put out mixes and stuff, and the mixes weren't common as like they are now. They're just abundant. But we were putting out mixes that we were doing like in the bedroom and just, again, put it out with a track list and like artwork and all this kind of stuff. And it spread quite far. And we were like among the first DJs that came from the internet to Rinse. So like there was a bunch of us, like, so there was like us and then Ben UFO and Pearson Sound and Bok Bok, and like we'd come, like we were more like an internet generation.
That was a pretty glorious like era of Rinse FM. I think if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know what Rinse FM is, but it went from being a pirate radio station to becoming an official station in the UK. But I mean, it's like the home of all like the underground dance music genres, and has been such a good reflection over the years of who's doing what in London and all the different kind of styles and sounds that you might hear if you're like on the street in London. But had something happened in grime that made it so there weren't as many DJs as there were before? Like,
it's just no raves. Like there was just no raves. So if DJs haven't got gigs to play, then they'll just go and play something else that they can get the gigs with. And a lot of them moved into like house and UK funky. Some people quit. And it was that transition between vinyl and digital. And some people were like, you know, they didn't want to go to CDs. Like some clubs you would go to, even like at that point, like 2009, there would be like no turntables. And imagine if that's what you'd been doing for the past 20 years or 10 years. Like they're like, I don't know how to even get this music from the record onto CD. Like it's just a myth. So a lot of people just dropped out. And again, it was like this internet generation was coming too. So like, yeah, just new faces, like even that's happened during the pandemic, right? Like they've just got a different take on how to communicate with people. Yeah. And even like record shops were closing as well because of downloading. So I guess like that whole culture had collapsed. So like when the year that I started Butters, 2010, the 2 main shops for grime closed. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Like, but
Which were what?
Rhythm Division and Uptime Records. So they closed in the same year that I started, and it was like, oh, well, I should just sell them direct. And at the beginning, like, no one wanted to give us like a distribution deal. So it was cool. It was like, oh, well, I'll just sell it on the internet myself. And then people come to me, and then that's why I've been quite DIY, because I was like, well, hold on. If I just sell them like direct and we get 100% of the money, what I have to do is just post them. That's easy. We built this kind of, group of people that we knew that would not always buy something, but were interested in what we were doing. So it was like, we could just be serving them, and, it would balloon sometimes with bigger records and it would contract, but there was this core group of people that we were serving, and we had the direct access to them. So it was cool. Like, if we didn't do that, then we wouldn't have like survived a year.
It's wild because sometimes you can make more money catering to like a niche audience that will support you and spend money on your products and buy everything you put out than you might be able to if you like sign to a big label and you're one of many, or your thing is diluted and kind of appeals to a bunch of different groups. Like, sometimes I feel like you're saying that and you were doing that back in 2010, and it's like become even more like that now, where like I almost feel like it's hard to have any success unless you are just catering to like your niche, however big or small.
Exactly. And maybe like I was lucky because I wasn't given anything at the start. So I was given like enough of a opportunity, like they say, like being on Rinse, and then that's where it stopped. So I was like, okay, well, I've got to make the most of this. And at the time, I don't know if it's still like this now, but they prided themselves on pushing things forward. So if you were like not popular anymore, they'll kick you off. And they had this thing of called like destroy and rebuild. It was kind of like embarrassing. Like they'll just like text you and be like, you've got no show now. And they'll like put you in an email and be like, these people have lost their show. And I mean, it was kind of like raw. It was quite horrible. Yeah, but that was the nature of like keeping up and doing interesting things. So when we got on there, I was like, well, I ain't been destroyed and rebuild. I'm going to like build my thing while I'm here and make the most of it and make, like, I guess like for context, who else was on the station at the time? So it was like Screaming Benga, Code 9, Boy Better Know, Noom Generals, Plastician, a lot of people that were out here doing stuff like in real life. Like I would go to their club nights and there'll be 1,000 people. So you're like, okay, there was like tangible results to what we were doing. And then I was like, okay, well, if I do it in a similar way with my style or my vision, then I'll get to that point. And it took about years to get to a point where I was like, okay, there's like 1,000 people now. Okay, sick. But it was like a process of getting there, like 200 cap, and then into this bigger venue. And then we did like Fabric Room 3, and then did this other club called Cable. And then from there, it was like, we're in a game now. And then it's like, it felt like a bit more real after we'd done that.
Do you have any particular people or other record labels or companies or any like entities that inspired you or inspire the look or the feel or what you do with Butters?
There's a few. So I'd say in terms of direct grime things, it's like Boy Better Know, just seeing the logo on a t-shirt, like dudes from the ends, like they've made their logo, they printed it on a t-shirt, and it just was like a brand. It looked as good as Nike, like from the start. And that logo is still there. They still use the same logo now. And the saying Boy Better Know, it's like, it's not something that people just commonly said. It was like their phrase, but now it's like a label and a collective. And I saw them at the biggest venue in London, like the equivalent of like Madison Square Garden. I've seen it literally from the 100 cap club right to 20,000 tickets. And so maybe to see the journey with the brand and the artist, like at all different points of their careers, but then also still having this same logo that was designed by JME on his like Photoshop. Hyperdub, like Code 9's label. Again, it was just like one of the things that was there when I started. Had good artists, diverse kind of characters. And they had a star as well. They had like Beryl they had this, again, mystique and all this kind of thing. Code 9's a wicked DJ as well. When I started going out, he was kind of like playing a bit less dubstep and bringing funky into it and playing all kinds of other music. So it was kind of against the grain at the time. And I just like the way he's kept it moving with his artists and his label and not got too stuck down with things. The branding on like the old Temper records and Rinse stuff was done by a guy called Give Up Art. And I think that just influenced the clean aesthetic that a lot of the labels at the time had. Definitely influenced us. Football culture like is quite like a big influence here because of like chants, you know, like the White Stripes song, the Seven Nation Army and things like that. Like songs that people could sing back to you. Not club anthems, like literally country anthems. So I saw like Stormzy perform at Glastonbury, like 100,000 people doing like this old grime song, like Rough Squad, this beat. And they're like, if you're like lucky to release a song like that, or like you get to like, if you make one, it's bigger than anything like you could even think about. I like live performances. Like I like seeing like, you know, even versus that Dubstep and Locks versus the other. I like seeing live music. I don't think that will ever change. Like, and that's probably why I like DJing, because it's like the visceral response of humans at the time. Yeah. Like, I think recorded music is like, it's sick, but I do like people in venues reacting and dancing and screaming, and anything can happen. Like, that's what I don't DJ like virtual sets and stuff, because I'm like, I'd just be in this room and I'd be bored by myself. I like the like, someone's got to put their hand on the deck and reload it, or just like, I love that energy.
What are some of those live moments that really stick in your mind?
I mean, easy ones to reference for me are like Forward versus Rinse. So they used to be like dubstep, grime, UK funky, and other kind of bass music all under the same roof in a like big venue in London. And that's not there anymore, called Matter. So you'd have like Screaming Benga, Boy Better Know, DJ Zinc, Artwork, KEB, Genius, Rusty, Sir Spyro, Miss Dynamite, like all under the same roof. Noom Generals, like just crazy lineups. And it was like £10 to get in. And yeah, the whole thing was like, you don't have to wear like shoes or anything. It was like literally the dress code on the flyer says like, wear your own garms. So it was like part of the like the joke or whatever. So I used to love those things because you just get a bit of everything. And kind of like, well, I just wanted to continue with Butters and other things like a lot of, you know, I used to go to like the Heatwave, their dancers a lot as well, like dancehall kind of collective here in London. Just like, again, just kind of does what it says on the tin, just playing dancehall hits like all night. People dancing, having fun. And then I think what happened as I got busier with DJing, I just started going to less nights. So the worst thing I think that happens, you don't make effort to go out because you know that you're going out anyway. It feels like you're in clubs all the time, but you're not going, you're not actively going, not queuing up, buying a ticket, seeing what this next scene is saying. So I've missed, you know, in the last, I'd say like 2015 to 2019, I've missed certain little waves of people coming through. But in that time, I was like up in the north of England a lot and going to baseline raves and throwing some as well. And that was sick because I missed the first wave of baseline because I was young and in London. And the second wave was like, the second wave of grime was like new characters, new music, but also had the OGs. It had like DJ Q and TRC and Bass Boy and TS7 and Jamie Duggan. Like it had like a good mixture of like OGs and new Gs. And the music is like loud and fun. And the crowds were like, you know, they had this festival, Bass Fest, when it first started. It was like 4,000 people in a room. It's like we couldn't do that in London with grime. So it was like visually like impressive. And then the artists that I was working with, like Roti, DJ Q and Flavor D, they were like the top of that scene. So it was like I got to experience something, kind of working in it, but also not playing in it. I never DJed those parties or anything. I was just watching. But we're lucky we've maintained a friendship and like because we work on the back end of their stuff. And we were never like territorial about, you know, you can't do this or you can't, like, we didn't have there was no power dynamic in that way. We were all coming up together And now like our role is like, so like with Skillium and myself, it's like our role is best served, helping these projects get out there or elevating them. And, when they want to do something, it's not on me to say, well, that's not the right creative direction more time. I'm like, well, just try it and see what happens. Like, no one's going to die. Like, when Flavor D said that she wanted to do drum and bass, I was just like, okay, well, try it in it, see what happens. And now we were speaking today, it's like just as well that she did, because a lot of the bass guys are transitioning to drum and bass, but because she's got a couple years jump on them, she's already like, releasing records on Hospital Records. So she's like a drum and bass label here. And it's kind of like established that she does that as well. And just, she would have been kicking herself if she didn't do it when she was thinking, oh, I should do it. So I never say to them, don't do something. I might like say something in addition. I'll be like, okay, maybe as well as this. But I try not to say no, because like it's their career, it's their life, it's their art. And to be honest, like most of the time I'd probably be wrong as well. So it's like, I don't want to be wrong. And if you're wrong, like they miss like, I'd say it's infinite possibilities, right? And if you're right, it's just like, oh, this song was like rubbish and that's it. So the upside of them just doing that idea is like anything can happen. But there hasn't been like, there's obviously been songs that are not as big or as good as the others, but it hasn't like collapsed them. There's not been like, oh, Flavor D's released a whack song, like she's finished. Like it's not really like that. So yeah.
What is your favorite Butters event that you've done?
A few favorites. So I've got one on my wall. Obviously you can't see, but this one is like one of the last ones we all did together. Roti, DJ Q, Flavor D, Swindle, and myself and Skillium in Tokyo. And I went there with like my school friends, and my uncle came to Japan for the first time. It was about 15 of us, all travelled out there on the same flight, and we just had a kind of like a holiday together, like tourist destinations and like sightseeing. I'd been to Japan a few times before that, but going with family and friends, and then having the party side. Some of them hadn't even seen me DJ before, and that's why I've got the poster on my wall. It's the only one poster I've got in the house, because it was like more like 10 years of work, the ability to fly everyone together and have that moment. The next year, everyone was busy doing their own thing, and then the pandemic happened. So now it's like got an even more special memory. One that people always tweet the Butters account with is Butters' third birthday set was Jamie and Skepta with Joker and Swindle. Like Joker was like a massive influence. He was like a few years ahead of us in terms of getting records out and being like a world touring DJ, and made it feel real that he could do it. So actually being able to get him to play, and then to play with Swindle, who he'd been compared to quite a lot. They went back to back, and then to have like these two guys like Jamie and Skepta go back to back, because they had actually come to the raves before just to like enjoy the night. I knew they would come, but there was no guarantee they were going to be on that set or anything. It was quite like impromptu, and there's a recording of it, so a lot of people have got to like listen to it over the years or discovered it for the first time, or like now like Swindle makes like mad different music to that. It's like just a little snapshot of where things were at. And that was our last night in that club as well. So it was like, we didn't know it at the time. You never know, innit? When it's the last night of a club most of the time. The club closed a few weeks later. And I think after a while, after that as well, we were a bit lost, because we lost our home. A year later, we did a Fabric Live CD, me and Skillium, and we did like a 4-hour set. And this is not common in our music to do long sets. Each hour had like a different MC. So we had like the first hour of Rico Dan, the second hour with New Generals, third hour with Skepta, and the fourth hour with Flowdown. And it was just as That's Not Me came out. Yeah, it was March 2014, because we were all in New York together. We booked the Fabric shows, we were booking like 6 months in advance. And I remember like them like, this is expensive. I was like, no, trust me, it'll be fine. And he had like the biggest tune in the country at the time. We had the Rave. Sometimes you just get luck with that. Like you book someone just because you like them, and then they have that sick tune, and you get all these people that would have never have known. And that was one of those times.
Yeah, I mean, when running a label, it definitely helps if you're the kind of person that has a sort of sixth sense about whose career is ascending or who's going to go on to do bigger and better things. The best labels are like ones that kind of predict the future in that way, which I honestly just think it's like a type of person. Like some people can see that and some people can't.
I think it's like optimism though. It's like some people maybe just hear a tune, it is, and then some people are like, oh, this girl's got something or this guy's got something. There's more to this. Like if you kind of move like that, then it's gonna be in your favor once or twice. And then once or twice it does, it's like life changing or like this super like big moment. I haven't always been like that, but in the last few years in particular, where I'm like thinking the best of people or thinking the best outcomes of different situations. This is an example of this, like when Sherelle's Boiler Room, and she had this moment, this DJ in London, and she goes wild and everyone in the crowd goes wild. And I was thinking, oh, that's like a moment. This is like a thing. This is like a shift. This is not just a viral thing. I think this is like a big thing. That's 2 years ago, and it's like worked out for her. She's doing really well. And the pandemic's happened. So like to persevere through that too, someone could have been like, this is just a reload, it's just whatever. But actually it was the birth of like a new DJ, a new way of thinking, all these other artists that came around, sound, people going, well, I want to play jungle in the club again. Like all this stuff happened at the same time.
Who was the first artist that you signed to Butters?
Roti. So we met him on Grime Forum and just started talking on email. And he was like my first proper like friend from outside of London. He's from Southampton, which is like in the south of the UK. I'd never been there. This is one thing about like the internet generation of people. Maybe this has always been like that to a degree. You have to be trusting of humans. You end up in random places talking to random people. There's like a dude that I've never met off the internet in your house, like in your spare room. That's just normal for music people. And when you sell it to someone else that doesn't live like that lifestyle, they'll be like, what? Like you met off the internet and he's in your house. Like what if he like steals your cat? Like what the hell? Like people find it so strange. But hopefully like there's still that kind of like musical friendship, global vibe that everyone has an understanding that we all kind of need to protect each other and be nice. Mark Roti is like, we met early and kind of just grew together. He was young as well. He's 4 years younger than us. So he would have been like 18. So we're like taking someone's baby boy like into the big city and like introducing them to people and going to like a pirate radio station where it's like illegal to be in. Yeah, it's mind blowing really that 2009 or whatever it was. Like that's standard fare. Like
I mean, when we were doing Trouble and Bass, we would call numbers on records, like in England. Like we just called up Johnny Cash from Black Ops, called up to Explicit, and we're like, "Do you want to come to New York?" That's even weirder because, like, at least on the internet, you could like see a picture of somebody's face, or nowadays you could like poke around their Instagram and be like, "Does this person seem whack or okay?" Or who are they friends with? Like. On MySpace, you could be like, who are they friends with? But like, they're just getting a random call from some kids in New York that are like, come here and play your like insane baseline tunes.
They must have thought it was like a prank, like that it was like a joke. Like
I definitely think some people did. But I mean, like, that's just the most amazing thing about music is that you are bonded to people over music that you might never get to know. Like, how would I ever know a bunch of people in Baltimore if it weren't for Baltimore Club and then like me going to Baltimore? Like I would have no other reason to go there or know anything about like what life is like there, or England for that matter.
Or England. Like, I mean, I didn't leave London until like regularly until I was DJing. So I never went to like Sheffield and Leeds and Manchester, Birmingham. Like this is only as an adult, like, mid-20s, I'd only started to explore the rest of the country. And then now a lot of those people that we worked with initially, like the promoters and, other artists, they're still doing it now. So you're like, oh, well, if that time, I didn't go to play this like club in like Birmingham for £70, then I might not be working with them today. It's like this. In the early few years, I was just like, I think I've just said like yes to nearly everything because I just want to try it, like, at least for the first time. If it doesn't work, then fine. Like, you know, like from working with us, it's like, it's never difficult to make anything happen with us, really. I'm just like, yeah, cool, let's do it. Like, as long as the date works, it's like, yeah, cool. I don't even like barter with people with money too much. I'm just like, whatever, it's fine. And I guess like with the artists I work with, like, someone invites you somewhere and you can do it, just go, see what happens. That's why I've been like loads of random places. And I think if you're seen to be available to go places, then people just invite you. So they're like, oh, I heard you're in New York. Like, can you come to like Boston? All right. And then like ended up in like random dude's house in Boston. We stayed in this guy's house and it had, I don't know if you've seen Ghostbusters before, but there was like the picture of this evil guy in Ghostbusters. Like, I don't know what, I think he's like the bad guy in Ghostbusters in a house. And he had that picture in the house. And it was like, he's like, yeah, you guys can, I don't think he even stayed in the same house as us. He just like left us in the house. But it had the evil picture of the Ghostbusters dude. And I thought, yeah, I remembered it the other day just because I saw the picture and I was like, oh my days, I saw this picture and this, it was like, what? Oh, yeah. All these random things that, like the safety levels, like you have to like not care about your safety doing this stuff. Like, it's obviously easier for me as like a man, like moving around the country or around the world or whatever. So when we was working with Flavor D, I was super mindful of like all the situations that I'd sending her into because I'd done them myself.
On that note, have you ever feared for your life or felt super in danger at an event or at a party?
I did like a festival with Skillium in Montenegro. I didn't know anything about Montenegro, the history. So it's a country in Eastern Europe and it's gone through like war and changes over the past 30 years. I just thought, yeah, I'll just see. So it was like a Baltic rap festival. So the Serbian rap, Montenegrin rap. It was in the middle of this forest, but again, we didn't know. I think there's only like a couple of flights a week to this place that we were going to. So we had to fly in the day before and they put us in this hotel, which had like gates and like guards. And it was like, yeah, if you want to come outside, then come and get us because you can't really just like walk out on the street here. So I just sat in the hotel room watching the crime channel until like we got to go to the first day of the festival, which we weren't actually playing. And it was in the middle of this forest, but we could see that there's people watching on the outskirts. So it's like seeing like fox's eyes or like you can see like animals' eyes in the kind of distance. You're like, what is going on? Like, are they just like watching, like looking to rob you? Like, oh, like who knows? Like, we just didn't know. And on the second day, yeah, they started stealing equipment and all sorts of like fights and like we didn't know what was going on. Like, and no one was trying to speak to us or inform us what's going on. I was like, okay, we finished our set now. Can we just leave? Because I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't know where I am. There's no Uber. Like we couldn't just leave on our own accord. This year was 2013. I had Twitter, but it's not like you could just like tweet for help. I'm like in this random place in this random country or something. Like what the hell's going on? Things like that you're just like, everything looks legit for a minute and then you look around, you're like, oh, you're in an airport hangar and the electricity is not like really, like you can see like sparks or, do you know what I mean? You just see things like, oh my God, this is not legit, is it? Like this is not like wired properly. Like anything could happen right now. Things like that. Here, one time, this is the only time I've ever actually been to LA. We played at the Echoplex. And there was like a massive fight during our set, like that we had to stop the music, everything. And I was not like I was fearing for my life. But in England, we don't have like guns and like people don't have guns generally in the thing. But there, like I didn't know if going left there could have meant something completely different to what it does in the UK. And once like there's like kind of fight in a club that stops the music and, you know, people punching each other and like men fighting women, what song do you continue with? There's like, especially our music is like super hype. Like you can't just like, okay, there's been a fight in the club. Shall I pull out the Temper Tea? That will calm it down a bit. Like there was like no kind of palate cleanser that we could have like reset the vibe with. And reggae was playing downstairs, like we were playing like the rowdy music upstairs, and there's like the biggest like scrap possible. Like this is like not good. And that's actually where Royalty met his wife that night. So there was some good that came out of the night.
What are some of the legit wildest things that you've ever seen in an event?
You know, like your friend in the carpet. People like that. There's like odd characters that you meet.
My friend
like,
in the car.
Yeah, like when we were in a club in New York, and then I stood on the thing thinking it was like a ledge to the bar, like so I could stand up a bit higher on the bar, and it was like a dude wrapped up in the carpet because he could feel it move, and I was like, oh, what's this? And I was like, oh, it's just that guy that's like in carpet. Okay,
that guy's a legend.
And then I saw him again the next night. That was the funny thing. I played another night with these people, and I can't remember their names, but it was like more like a kind of hedonistic party on the coast, but I can't remember what the place is called. I remember you saying to me like, "You're going there, okay?" Like it was by the water, and there's like naked people and people having sex. And
did you play a sex party?
But it was outdoors. It was outdoors.
Burning Man.
Yeah, those people, the people that I went with and took me there were burners because that's all they were talking about. Their thing was called like Tsunami Bass System, Bass Sound System or something like that. And they took me to this spot while I was playing like grime. I was like, oh, okay. Like literally right, like this guy was like leaning on the decks, like on the, like his back was like towards me while like, I mean, he's with some girl. I was like, oh, okay, this is like surreal because I've just never seen that before. The reason why I don't like repeating stories is because it doesn't sound like it actually happened. It sounds like this is the kind of thing that you would make up if you were making up an outrageous party story. But I've got picked up in, I can tell you, I got picked up in Bushwick by this couple. They spoke about Burning Man for that hour and some change. They wore hats and they have a sound system. One of them played like a trumpet or something while they were DJing. and there were people, like it was insane. Like I know these people exist. This wasn't like a dream. This definitely happened.
It's really funny. No, I'm cracking up because I'm like crying.
I had to ask you what Burning Man was. I remember like when I came back to New York, I was like, what is Burning Man? Because they thought I knew what it was. And that's the first time I had heard about it.
Yeah, these are real people. They have a space called the Brown Note. That's what their warehouse is called, the Brown Note. And they have a really killer sound system in there that they've built. I threw a party there with Lofa. But yeah, they do wear these kind of Peruvian like wolf hats. I don't know. Like they're like what people wear in indigenous communities in like the mountains in South America. And I'm just sad that I didn't go with you this party because it sounds really nuts.
Yeah, I've just never seen them since as well. So like I've been back to America a few times since, and some people, this is the kind of beauty as well of music and traveling and stuff. Like some people in your life are just going to be one hit wonders, and they leave an impression on you. And that was the first time I heard about Burning Man. There's not like loads of couples promoting and doing this kind of stuff. Like especially like this was a partnership. This was like doing this together. It was like, oh, that's love. That's kind of sick that you're into the same thing at the same kind of level. And we met a couple like that in Japan as well. Same kind of thing where, you know, husband and wife that had been together through the music, promote together for 20 years. And you're like, oh, that's sick.
You've thrown a lot of events over time. And you do drop a lot of very key knowledge, like I mentioned, on your social media. So I feel like people can tune in there if they want to get some knowledge darts about running labels and being an independent artist and all that kind of stuff. So I won't go too into it here. But what would you say, based on the number of events you've thrown and been to, what would be some of your advice for the future promoters of the world or the current promoters of the world?
Yeah, the current thing. I mean, I think starting small and regular, actually. The people that learn to put on parties and maybe had like weeklies or bi-weeklies or monthlies and did that for a while before they took on something bigger. You learn all the things that can go wrong and then how to react. It's not like you let the things go wrong, but if you're running like a 100 cap thing in a dive bar and just DJing with your friend, everything that can go wrong at a big night can happen at a small night, and the problem solving is more or less the same. So if there's that kind of spot where you can do that thing early and try things out, just invite friends and, you know, be something quite super casual, but also like trying to make it work, then that's a good place to start. Like, it's not the best thing to like book out the venue that everyone goes to, you know, and book the famous DJ and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a harder way of going about things. And then as well, just, it's going to sound really backwards, especially because of the kind of music that I play, but like there was like 3 Elijah and Skilliums. There was like Elijah and Skillium that could play like 100 cap dive bar. I had like a USB full of dancehall at any time ready to go, and still do now, and can DJ to people that don't know, like just want to have a good night out, and knowing how to play a set for your city, wherever you live, be just prepared and flexible enough to play that when it's time. And then there's like the artist, Elijah and Skillium, that is playing, you know, the grime set and, you know, the things that we were playing on Rinse and songs from our label. And then the other Elijah and Skillium is like warming up for Kano or something, like at his concerts. We're setting a mood for something bigger to happen. So it's not about us at that stage. We are playing like most UK music, but we're not going to play it in a way that is going to upstage the person that we're going to play for. I see like this debate happen all the time on Twitter. It's like, oh, you can just go ahead and smash it anytime, just do whatever you want. Like exercising some restraint, or at least, you know, 20 minutes before the guy comes on or 15 minutes before the guy comes on, just tone it down a bit, give people a bit of breathing space. Yeah, just know that it's not about you. Like, people don't come to pay to see you, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you can still enjoy that role and be like, that's still a valuable thing, and to be trusted sometimes with those bigger shows. I see that role done badly, but then I see it done well. So I'm like, I want to be one that set the mood and have DJ hats for all of those things. But primarily, like, if someone was to book me, like when I used to come to New York or play trouble and bass or something like that, I know you're not booking me to play dancehall or something, you know what I mean? Like, I want to give you the sound of London or the sound of Elijah and Skillium and that side of things. And sometimes there's like a good overlap between the 3 things. Like, there's like songs that it's just popping, it's not from your scene or not from your thing, but you just like it, it fits in your set, and it catches people off guard, and like, oh, like, there's been days where, or weeks where the most popular song in the country is like 135 BPM, and I like the song, but it's not a grime song, and I can just mix it in, and everyone has a nice time. And that's like, those moments are wicked. And just, I'm not afraid to play bangers in the club. Like,
is there any way that people can prep themselves, in your opinion, for these different situations? Because I feel like it's a bit hard, especially if somebody has never played that type of gig before, to sort of figure out how to do the opening set for Kano, or, you know, DJ while a grime MC is playing.
I think it's just being in the environment. Yeah, just being in it. So like, a lot of the times I go out, or even if you're just, say like, if you're in a bar, I just think, oh, what would I do in here? Like, what music would I play? If someone's playing like some house music or something, I'll be like, oh, what would I play in this environment? What could I pull off the computer and put on a USB? If I had like an hour's notice and this guy's playing like, say, JB Jones and that kind of style, and then I had to follow, what would I play that I like, that is authentic to me, but then will still work in this room? So it's just like, just having these things in the back of my head. You know, when you go to festivals, think, wow, these people are like playing to like 10,000 people. Like, how could I do that being me and not like, I don't know, just play a whole set of techno? Like, if I had to use techno as the glue to all of this stuff that I play, like, whose songs would that be? Like, okay, Robert Hood makes stuff at 140 BPM. There's all these man from Detroit that kind of fits with the grime stuff. Oh, Stingray, okay, like, you just start discovering music, and then like, yeah, like you're saying about Baltimore, Ballet Funk and stuff, you're like, oh, that fits.
DJing, it's hard.
Yeah, and fun. It's like, but it's this endless game that like, there's no best DJ. Maybe there's a best DJ for a night or a moment. Like, you know, like, you've been to something like Sonar or something, and you see someone kill it and go, okay, like, sick. And then you go and see like 2 hours later, someone else is killing it. You're like, okay, can't be the best DJ. That's the best thing about it. DJing, I guess like what's changed about it for me is that I never felt like it was supposed to represent my whole being. You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm bringing the grime to the party. It doesn't mean that's what I'm only going to eat. Like you know what I mean? Whereas now it's like I need my whole self represented. I want to play all the music. I want to, give all the shades of my character. It's like I don't care. Like I'm just playing these tunes because that's, what I've contributed to and like the community that I come from. But it's not representative of my whole being, like or like all my music taste in one place. Like there's a time for that for me. I go and like listen to something else when in my own time, and maybe there will be a time to be that kind of DJ. But for now, while I'm in like this mode of like doing like projects and stuff, then I will do what you think I'm gonna do effectively. Like sometimes you go and see a DJ and like they just like play the weirdest set and you're like, what the hell was that about? And then sometimes you go see DJ and like, that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. And it was sick. And I want to be in that. Like the DJs that were big when I started are still big now. Like Andy C, like I saw him on Saturday, like at a festival, like main stage, like going ham. And I'm like, oh, it's still Andy C. Like when I speak to my uncle about these things, it's like, he's still the biggest DJ. I'm like, yep. He's still good. And he said he's still the biggest DJ and he's still good. Even like David Rodigan, I saw this video of him going viral on the weekend. It's like, David Rodigan's still there and it's still good. So like, you're not going to be that guy. And like, this is the thing about some of the old school DJs is that you got like two halves where like, they're like proper like granddads on Instagram. They post everything because they're so excited to be on the internet. And every meme like they find funny, just like, post it. Yeah, let's put that one out. Like we're not a care in the world. And then you've got the like EZs where you're like, not sure if he actually exists in any other form apart from in a booth for 60 minutes with a hat on. No one's seen him without a hat. No one's seen him like in the supermarket. I'm not sure if he's ever been to IKEA. Like where these buy his clothes from. Like I have like no idea about it. And it's kind of like what makes you like, like still like have a bit of mystique around these characters. I don't have any mystique. I'm not that interesting, but with these guys like EZ and I don't know about Andy C socials, but it's still a bit of old school aura about that. I think as well with grime and the scenes that are around at that time, because so much of it was pre-social media, if you're interested in it enough, there's still a bit of an aura about it, whereas with the music that comes around now, you see what people are doing day to day. Like you're kind of a bit more in tune with who they are as people, and like there isn't as much mystery by nature of what the way we communicate today. In 2003, you never saw like the screen of a producer's DAW. You never saw that. Now, like you can just go on Instagram and people just, I'm making this beat. This is how I did it, and see it in 1 minute. So the mystique of a lot of things has been given away. We know anyone can do it to a degree, and there's some great things about that. I think there's mainly great things actually, that a lot more people have got to be involved in art and music, and I've seen the impact that it's had on people's lives in terms of, the positive effects of having a focus on a craft and developing, and regardless, put the career bullshit aside, like just having a thing, a passion, that's like sick in itself.
Before you get out of here, I definitely wanted to ask you about where grime is at the moment, though, because I think if anyone knows, as somebody that lives in the States, I always feel a bit, we're the outsiders to it because it is British music, and it's still, despite there being famous grime artists, it's still like quite underground music as well. Even though, you've had Dizzy and Chip and whoever in the pop charts, like it goes in these waves. So what is it doing at the moment?
So the predominant like rap music for young people in the UK now is drill. So a lot of the rappers, MCs, people that are making grime are doing it for the love of that music. It's not something that people do to get popular in, to be a pop star or to get somewhere. Like it's not the default music for young people anymore in that way. It's kind of like, I think the moment of this scene has happened. It's like 20 years old now, yeah? And it's not like maybe where stars are going to be born out of anymore, but the sound kind of endures in everything else. So again, after like a pandemic, it's hard to like work out what the scene actually is now. Like when people are able to link up again and do raves properly, and you know, people are starting to make tunes again, it will kind of get a semblance of, okay, this is what it is, but it's not the premier like music for like young people anymore. Like, and that's inevitable. It's supposed to, again, it's like this thing of grime being the antithesis of garage. The next thing that came was supposed to be like maybe like more aggressive than grime and not club focused, because then these people don't go to clubs, and there hasn't been any clubs for nearly 2 years. So it's like, why would they be making beats for that kind of stuff? And I think a lot of like, it's hard, like grime is like born out of like a club culture, and I guess drill is born out of like rap culture. So a lot of like, even the like young rappers here, they don't start understand it. They're like, why would you even rap like that? Like, why? Because they just don't get the links between these things in the same way. It's super interesting. And like all these things start to like get into economics of like why people do stuff. So if you see a scene working, then people magnetize around it. And then you get more rappers, you get more producers, like everyone wants to go there. That's where the fun happens. And then something else comes, and then people move on to that thing because that's where the party is, that's where the money is and that stuff. And today, for like a lot of people like around my age, a bit younger, a bit older, grime is like this kind of thing. They're like, like I'm so glad that not everyone, but like I'm so glad that it kind of worked out in the end, because it was looking a bit peak in like 10 years ago. And then, you know what I mean, we had all these guys, Skepta and Kano and JME and Big Nasty and Big Zoo, AJ Tracy, Stormzy, Novelist, all these kind of guys like find like a career and make it work. And then us guys, like the producer side, a lot of people making like music that is on the radio here all the time. And like, I saw a tweet the other day that this WizKid song, The Essence, is made by like someone that used to make grime. And like, so the people are like living on, and people are like, oh yeah, I've seen your journey. Like like there's like a kind of like a respect, but in terms of like people sitting down there going out to specifically make grime, is like it is a very niche thing now. The kind of love for it lives on. Even like I watch the Instagrams of the DJs playing music on the weekends and stuff, and you see like some of the bootlegs of the like famous grime songs still going off. You're like, okay, it wasn't like just a moment. At least the songs like are still going. It's nice to see again, like some of the songs I played now are 20 years old, and it's nice to like know that you can still play them and it's not like cheesy or like no one wants to hear it or people stop dancing or something like that. It's like people still have a warm feeling towards it, which is nice. And that's all you can ask for, really.
Well, Elijah, thank you so much for joining me here on Rave to the Grave. It was really nice to hear your story and, like I said, not be shouting over a loudspeaker and just get a chance to catch up. I feel like every time we talk, you know, we have a deep conversation. But yeah, it's always a pleasure. So thank you for being here.
Yes. Thank you.
Rave to the Grave is recorded at the historic Newsstand Studios at Rockefeller Center in the heart of New York City. This podcast has been produced and hosted by me, Vivian Host. Our engineer is superstar Joe Hazen. Most of the music you hear in this episode is on the Butters label, except for the DWE Freestyle and Wookiees Are You Ready? For more, check out butters.co.uk. That's Butters with a Z. Make sure to check out our other episodes of Rave to the Grave on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on Instagram at ravetothe.grave and check out more information and links from all of our episodes on our website at ravetothegrave.org.
If you like what you hear, please leave us a rating or a comment. I'm serious when I say it helps a lot. I hope you enjoyed the show, and until next time, rave on.